Let us discuss the answers of the last class, children. I am sure you have all done the activities given. First, let's see the fill in the blanks. I'm sure you have all written the answers. Just check it up, children. First, the systematic presentation of past events is called history. Second, there cannot be history without sources. Third, a person who constructs history is called a historian. Native sources are also called indigenous sources. Literature based on religion is called secular literature. The second activity was for you to identify the type of source. Now we have a picture on the left hand side corner of Kautilya's Arthashastra. I am sure you have all identified it as non-secular literature. On the right hand side top corner you have again a picture. I am sure you have recognized it as secular literature. Again we come down, you have a picture of Mahabharata, which is again secular literature, and Manusmriti, which is non-secular literature. In the last class, we discussed what is meant by history, that the systematic presentation of past events is called history. Correct, children? We also saw why we need history, and we also learned who is known as the father of history. Who is known as the father of history, children? Correct, Herodotus. Further, we learned that without sources we cannot have any history, and that the sources were basically divided into literary sources and archaeological sources. And under literary sources, we learnt about written literature and oral literature. Further, written literature subdivided into native literature and foreign literature. Under native literature, we learned that it could be divided into secular and non-secular. Now, in the foreign literature, we'll deal later. Let us take up oral literature in this class, children. What is oral literature? Literature which is transferred by mouth and not through writing is known as oral literature, which is transferred from one generation to another generation by mouth. Now, there are three types of oral literature: Lavanese, folk tales, historic, or legendary. Lavanese are those folk songs which are sung by the people depicting some events or some kind of custom or some tradition. They are stories which are sung or danced. Now, Lavanese is a very famous folk dance in Maharashtra. In Karnataka, we tend to call them Harikatha. Stories of Hari and also stories of many kings are also spoken. People from villages will surely know that. Now, folk tales. I'm sure all of you know folk tales, right? Stories of ancient people told in a dance drama form or simple story form, whichever way they are known as folk tales. India is a country which has a beautiful past, and along with the past came lot of customs. During your religious functions, you can see that there are different kinds of dances, and at that time they tell certain stories in their different dance forms as dance dramas, and there are a lot of ballads, and each depict a myth or a story. So these can also used as sources for history. Now let's repeat, children. Oral literature has three types. You can classify them as the Lavanese, folk tales, historic or legendary literature. Please repeat, children. Lavanese, folk tales, historic or legendary literature. Let's learn archaeological sources. Before that, shouldn't we know what archaeology is? Archaeology is the study of human activity through the recovery and analysis of material culture. That means it records artifacts, architecture, the biofacts, and all the excavated materials from the landscapes. Okay, fine. Now, when we are talking about excavated, what do you mean by excavation? Don't we have to learn that first? Yes, the scientific process which is involved in digging the earth to obtain the ancient remains like fossils or bones or any activities which is used by the people like olden pots. All those things come under excavation. Excavation means digging the earth to collect the remains through which we can understand what kind of culture or what kind of humans or what kind of animals lived in past is known as excavation. So when you excavate land and when you get so many different kinds of things from the land with the help of which you can learn or understand the past, that is known as archaeological sources. Now let us see what are the different kinds of archaeological sources which help us in history. The first one is monuments. Monuments means the old buildings. It could be religious temples, or it could be forts, or it could be any kind of buildings which were built by kings in the olden days. When we look unto those monuments and we can see what wonderful kind of architecture was used, and there will be a lot of writings inside the monuments. Based on that, you can understand what kind of king ruled the area, who is the king who built the monument, and all such details can be understood. So, monuments is one of the way through which we can understand our past. The second one is coins. In the olden days, as currency, coins were printed. And when you see the coins which you get from excavation sites, you can learn and understand about the trading concepts, what kind of currency the kings used, to which period they belonged. This study of coins has a name, numismatics. What is the study of coins called, children? Numismatics. The third type of archaeological sources are inscriptions. Inscribing means etching or writing or using a chisel and cutting into a rock. Now you can find, have you gone to the different kinds of olden temples like Hoysala's Halebedu and all that? I'm sure you've all gone in your excursions or you would have gone with your family members. You can see the walls of the temples have old writings in them. Through these writings, if we are able to decipher and understand them, we can learn about the different rulers or who built the temple, and we get our understanding of that particular time. So, inscriptions help us in understanding the past. The fourth is the archaeological remains. Now, every time you excavate your land or dig into the land, it is not necessary that you'll get a proper full building or a full nice coin or anything like that. No, many of these artifacts or many of these places are ruined or broken because of the time. And once you excavate them, we only find the remains, the broken pieces. Based on this, we can date and try to understand what kind of structure it is and all that. This is known as the archaeological remains. Now, children, let's see once again. Archaeological sources are of four types. 1. Monuments. 2. Coins. 3. Inscriptions. 4. Archaeological remains. Please repeat, children. Monuments, coins, inscriptions, and archaeological remains. Children, what is the study of coins called? Correct, numismatics. India is a rich land of native sources. We have so many different writings by different authors belonging to each and every period of the different kings who ruled over our land, be it our native rulers or later on the Mughal rulers. We have lot of writing which proves the different kinds of events which took place. What about foreign sources? Do you know there are many Europeans who had written about India? There is a branch of knowledge or science which studies just the culture and history of India. It has been named as Indology. Indology is the branch of knowledge of science which studies the culture and history of India. Now, at this time, there was a movement which is known as the Jesuits movement. The Society of Jesus is a religious order of the Catholic Church which was started in Rome by Ignatius Loyola. He wanted to convert many of the non-Christians to Christianity, and hence many of these missionaries landed in India. They wanted to learn more about the Indian system, Indian custom and Indian traditions, and thus Indology was born. Of them, few famous people. Heinrich Roth was a very famous person who was also a missionary. He settled in Agra and he translated Sanskrit grammar into Latin language. Remember, children, this took place 350 years ago. The greatness of a Sanskrit language was understood even at that time to Europeans. Then came Father Codex. A century later, he understood there were many similarities between Sanskrit and European languages, and he wanted to translate many of our books into their language. At this time, India slowly came under the British. The British managed to collect the revenue rights in Bengal, and they started setting up their trade relations. Now, to set up a very flourishing and a company which could trade in India, first they wanted to learn about us. So, they started into studying all about our customs, our values, and our traditions along with our great history. The British officers wanted to understand us. They even wanted to know how we were ruled by our rulers. Because of this, some of the administrators of Britain were very much attracted towards Indian literature and culture. And what happened because of that? All our wonderful books like Manusmriti, Bhagavad Gita, and the other books were all translated into English. This helped to the spread of the great Indian culture into Europe. Of the many Europeans who came and settled in India and have contributed to Indology, special mention should be given to Sir William Jones. He established the Asiatic Society in India in 1784 CE at Calcutta, the present Kolkata. He came to India as a judge of the Supreme Court in Bengal, and he was very much fascinated with the Indian customs. After establishing the Asiatic Society, the main thing which he conducted was to build up a library over there. One of the main activities of this society was to collect all manuscripts of India. Do you know, children, at present, this library of the Asiatic Society is having a collection of about 1,17,000 books and 79,000 journals, printed almost in all major languages of the world. Remember, all these are translation of our wonderful culture and our indigenous books. It also has a collection of 293 maps, microfilm of 3,87,003 pages, 182 paintings, and so on. It's a rich treasure house. Further, Sir William Jones, he himself translated our Geet Govinda, Manava Dharma Shastra, and the famous Kalidasa's Shakuntala from Sanskrit to English. These books are widely acclaimed in Britain, and they have printed many copies wherein the greatness of our tradition had been spread to Britain. There were many other Europeans who wrote about India, but we have to mention Max Muller, the great German scholar who wrote the Sacred Book of the East. Now, of the East, he mentions most of Asia, but he has given lots of reference to India. He has written 50 volumes of the Sacred Book of the East. We also have to mention James Mill, the Scottish historian who wrote the book of History of India, and he's written 6 volumes of it. Do you know what is the speciality, children? Neither Max Muller nor James Mill ever visit India. They have never set foot on Indian soil, but they have written so much about India. The great French missionary Abbé Dubois is a different matter. He came and settled here in Ganjam near Srirangapatna, and he lived here for 24 years. He was very much interested in all our customs, and he lived like a hermit, so much so that the local people called him Dodda Swami. He wrote a book called Hindu Manners, Customs and Ceremonies, in which he has written so much about our traditions. He has explained about the values and thoughts and festivals, the Varnashram system in his work. Apart from these Europeans, we have many others, of whom like Francis Buchanan, Colonel Wilkes, B.L. Rice Fleet, and so many people who have all recorded and taken the information from all our manuscripts, from our inscriptions, from our chronicles, and they have reconstructed Indian history and they have shared it in their countries. Such is the greatness of Indian literature. Now we understand this is how history is constructed. Let's read these points, children. Oral literature is further classified into Lavanis, folk tales, historic and legendary sources like myths, ballads, legends, etc. Archaeological sources are the physical remains or ruins of the things used or the constructed structures in the past. The scientific process involved in digging the earth to obtain the ancient remains or fossils of an ancient people is called excavation. Archaeological sources are classified into monuments, coins, inscriptions, other archaeological remains. Heinrich Roth translated Sanskrit grammar into Latin language. Father Codex identified that there are many similarities between Sanskrit and European languages. Manusmriti, Bhagavad Gita, and other great literary works were translated into English by many British writers. Here are some points for you to remember, children. Please go through them carefully. The branch of knowledge, science, which studies the culture and history of India is called Indology. Sir William Jones came to India as a judge of the Supreme Court in Bengal. He established the Asiatic Society in 1784 CE at Calcutta. He translated Manava Dharma Shastra, Gita Govinda, and Shakuntala from Sanskrit to English. Max Muller, a German scholar, wrote an English work, Sacred Book of the East, in 50 volumes. James Mill, a historian from Scotland, wrote History of India in 6 volumes. Abbé Dubois, a French missionary, settled at Ganjam near Srirangapatna and wrote Hindu manners and customs and ceremonies. He lived like a sage and was fondly called Dodda Swami. Since you have listened to the class and read through points to remember, writing the fill in the blanks is going to be very easy. Why don't you try, children? First one, the study of coins or currency is. Second, the physical remains or ruins used to reconstruct past are. Third, the Asiatic Society was established by. Fourth, Heinrich Roth translated Sanskrit grammar into. Fifth, the branch of knowledge or science which studies the culture and history of India is. We have done an activity like this in the last class, remember children? Now in this class you have to identify the type of sources of history. Last class it was only written literature. Now you have a combination. Just look at it and identify. I'm sure you will love it. Remember children, we learned the table for the sources of history. How that is divided into literary sources, archaeological sources, how literary sources is further divided into written literature, oral literature, and again written literature into native and foreign, oral literature into Lavanese, folktales, historic, legendary, and archaeological sources into monuments, coins, inscriptions, and other archaeological remains. Now you have to remember that and make a table. Draw it in your notebook, children. All the answers which to the questions which we have given in this lesson we will discuss when we take up the next lesson. Thank you, children.